Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome to the Security Council, and thank you for convening today's debate. I'd like to thank Oscar Duranko for a very difficult assessment, which has been given in a very honest fashion. And I would like to align with the statements to be delivered later by the distinguished permanent representatives of Egypt and Kazakhstan on behalf of the non-aligned movement and the UIC respectively. As you are well aware, Pakistan has stood by its Palestinian brethren in their 6-decade-long quest for realization of their inalienable right to self-determination.
But let me just say briefly, gentlemen.
Today, the protagonists of the Arab Spring,
ladies and gentlemen,
including democracy, have said much the same for many parts of the world. We therefore call upon the Security Council to transform its words into resolute action, notwithstanding the very welcome recent quartet activities in the Middle East. And the Council should ensure a mechanism for implementation of its decisions on Israel and Palestine. Otherwise, it will further undermine its own credibility. Mr. President, while we deliberate endlessly in the Security Council, the Palestinian representative showcased today how they continue to suffer at the hands of what they call an occupation force. I'm not terribly sure whether his cry for help is condemned unheard here, or whether the dreams of his people for peace and tranquility is not shared, while they continue to draw world attention to their encirclement and uncrossable barriers. The settlement activity of Israel continues, sadly, as an exclusive and unabated matter. And the Middle East Quartet and the international community seems to be in a haze of suspended promise. The Palestinians want to halt to this exclusive activity of settlements, a demand that has been endorsed by the Council and universally supported here. Yet there is seemingly no recourse on the matter. Last week, as some of you have mentioned, the USG Valerie Amos informed the Council that the Emergency Relief Coordinator, that settlement activity had rendered 43% of the West Bank unusable to Palestinians, and furthermore had impeded access to services, which led to increased violence and led to severe starvation in the territory. The Gaza strangulation and starvation is neither legally justifiable nor morally tenable. It is systematically eradicating the space for the establishment of a viable Palestinian state. Then, in my mind, this constitutes a major roadblock to peace. But this strangulation has been further enforced with effect by a decree from the 2nd of January 2012 and extended. So life in Gaza will not, cannot return to normal. Well, we therefore call for full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1860. And we would like to join the civilized world and suggest that to stop strangulation and starvation, let the UN arrange a flotilla of its own to carry relief supplies for the hateless Gaza. Surely, the Israelis cannot deny UN humanitarian supplies under UN auspices. Meanwhile, I would like to mention that the progress that the Palestinians, despite overwhelming obstacles, have made over the last couple of years in establishing state institutions, in my mind has been extraordinary, something that was accepted by not only a number of independent observers, but also manifested in acceptance of its membership by UNESCO last year. There's no gainsaying the fact that the Palestinians are working towards full UN membership as a just reward. Would like to come to a point that gets whispered about certain corridors of recent. Someone said, have you noticed how often we mention Iran, Syria, it's been here today as well, Nigeria, Libya, Sudan, and they wonder, and I wonder with them, should I be afraid, being a Muslim, as all these countries seemingly come from that category? And a lot of people say, well, the way things are going, we're going to be the next 70% of council work, shouldn't we get a permanent seat as well? So I wonder if we are doing right in frightening the world into religious ethnicities. I don't think it is beneficial to this council or this institution. And when I see it with just a passing reference, I would like to say it because people are talking about it. And I think when talk starts, it's a matter of time before people get worried about things. And this is a sort of environment that I would respect many of my colleagues here to address in a fashion that this is not so, and I hope it is not so. Meanwhile, having said that, let me also say that I am confident that this sort of a scare will not be encouraged by this council, and we will be, as was mentioned by various people in various aspects, referring to other important aspects of the world today under discussion here, in a fashion that promotes democracy, promotes representative government, etc. But, as they say, why does this get mentioned as regime change? Shouldn't regime change be an outward feeling of everyone within their own countries to motivate change? And what happens if that change takes on some other aspect, which is not acceptable to those purveying the scenes from far off shores? I believe this may not sound too reasonable, but I do wish we would be reasonable and not allow something like this to emanate from the sacred halls of this chamber. Therefore, Pakistan supports lasting peace for all the inhabitants of the Middle East, all, irrespective of religion, ethnicity, or nationality. That is important. The framework for peace in the Middle East is laid down elaborately in Security Council resolutions 242, 338, 1397, 1515, and 1860. And the Madrid terms of reference, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the Quartet Roadmap, mustering and sustaining the political will to implement the framework is imperative. We hope that the international community will lend its rightfully so moral and political weight to nudge the process towards our common objective of an independent, sovereign, and viable state of Palestine, as has been decided by the International Committee many, many times for years, living side by side and in peace with all its neighbors, including Israel. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for his statement.